Man, Sam Acho, my brother, it is so good to be with you. I'm so excited to spend some time just talking about this powerful book that you wrote. Change starts with you. I'd love to just start out, man. Like, give me some context. What was the inspiration behind the book? What really caused you to want to put pen to paper and get this message out there?
Well, Josh, first of all, it's good to be with you as well. I miss you. We
Come
were
on,
together. I
man.
guess I don't know if it was 3 years ago. I don't know if it was four. I think right before the pandemic, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. And you had and still have a huge impact on me. Part
Mm,
one, and watching you in front of camera, if you will, but also behind the scenes, seeing what you're
mm.
doing, how you're serving, who you're serving, where you're serving, and why you're serving. Consistently for me is like this thread. Think about like something that's like being knit together, like a quilt or something like that. Like you're just like this thread that
Come
doesn't
on,
care
man.
who gets the credit,
Mm,
but you just consistently show up and it provides this safety net and
mm.
safety blanket for people like me. And so the fact that you reached out,
Come on.
number one, I couldn't be more excited. Number two, the impetus of this book really began. Parts of this book began when we first connected. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is I was going through a transition in my life. I was going through some change. I was going through some uncertainty. I just finished, I didn't know at the time, but I just finished my NFL career, right? I played for 9 years in the NFL for
Come
the
on.
Bears, the Cardinals, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Buffalo Bills. And I was looking for what was next. And you and I connected,
Yeah.
and some other friends connected. And I left that 2, 3 day summit in Colorado with a newfound passion, desire. And that newfound passion actually turned into a full-time career now at ESPN,
Come on.
but also more so a desire to make a change in people's lives and also in my own. And so that book, this book that you're holding that's behind me, I think this way, yeah, the lighting may not be able to see
Yeah.
it so well, is birthed out of some conversations
Yeah.
that were had when we were together. So the power of your presence means a lot. Change starts with you. The subtitle is Following Your Fire to Heal the Broken World. It started during COVID, right
Mm.
after George Floyd was killed. George Floyd was murdered. Ahmaud Arbery was murdered. Breonna Taylor. I mean, all of it was going on.
Yeah.
And sports had been canceled.
Mm.
And that's important, at least for me, because I mentioned like I was just finishing my NFL career. So I actually had moved from Chicago, where I was playing for the Bears, just been released by the team. I tore my pec. I was out for the season. I moved to Arizona because I wanted to find. Well, really, I feel like the Spirit of God was leading me that way. To be
Yeah.
honest, like this is like before I even knew about COVID or anything. Like I felt the Spirit of God was like saying, "Hey, I need you to go," and I was like, "Okay, why?" Right? Like things were good where I was at. Like we had a
Yeah.
great house, great gym, right? You know, place to work out for me and for my wife. Great schools for kids. It was perfect. And it really felt like Spirit of God was like, "Hey, son, I need you to go." And specifically, I felt like he was calling us to Arizona. And I was like, "All right, cool." Mind you, I was doing a podcast with some friends out of Arizona. So, like, there were some things that made sense. But all of a sudden, like, I'm like, well, I'll go a little bit later. Boom, boom, boom. Well, fast forward, like, COVID happens. Everything's canceled. Everything's shut
Mm.
down. The city of Chicago shut down. And it's
Wow.
like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go. Right. So, like, we left right around that time. And I've been spending the few weeks kind of post pandemic in Arizona training
Mm.
for what I thought would be my next season. And then all of a sudden we mentioned sports canceled, everything canceled. And then this societal shift happens.
Yeah.
And internally, there was some shifting going on in me as well, because I'm watching not only like people who look like me get murdered, right? But also there was nothing to distract us from it.
That's right.
And not only that, I'm also
Yep.
looking at like societal like despair, right? The haves and the have-nots. This
Mm.
huge kind of like disproportional deal of like how come some people can afford toilet paper and can get there on time, some can't.
Yep.
Some people have food, some people only got their food at lunch at their school.
Mm.
And now that school is canceled, what now? So, anyways, a lot was going on in my heart.
Yep.
And fast forwarding a little bit, I felt like God was like, "Hey, son, it's time for you to go back to Chicago." And so I took this kind of 4 day road trip with me and my family back from Arizona to Chicago and got to some other cool things we can get into if we have time. But as I'm driving back, we had actually stopped in St. Louis on our last stop of this 4 day road trip. And I got a call from a friend of mine who was like, "Sam, I don't know if you see what's going on in
Mm.
this community, but you have to do something."
Mm.
And mind you, I had spent the last few days in my car, right? 8, 9, 10 hour days driving, and I hadn't really been paying attention to what was on the news. But that day I'd seen like, man, like looting, rioting, chaos. And it's like Chicago. And for me, that was home. Yep. And so he says, you got to do something. I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm a football player. He's like, Sam, use the gifts that God gave you to make a change. So I'm like, all right. And so fast forward, I finished my drive. We come back to Chicago. I met up with a nonprofit leader. I said, hey, what do you need? Like, I got some athletes I can talk to. Like, what do you need? Like, we can protest. We can post a tweet to the president. Like, whatever you need. And she's like, Sam, honestly, all that our kids need right now, like at least the kids that I spend time with, these 3, 4, 5, 600, like they need someone who can listen to them. I'm like, no, but I'm ready to rock. He's like, just somebody to listen. And so I said, okay. And so I, by the grace of God, got a chance to get together with some athletes from the Bears, the Bulls, the Cubs, the Blackhawks, the White Sox, Chicago Sky, the WNBA team, Brittany Payton, who's the daughter of the late, great Walter Payton.
Wow.
And we got together with some athletes, some police officers, and some kids from the west and south side of Chicago, and we just listened. And that listening turned into actioning, right? We listened and we took a tour of their community and realized, yes, there's broken glass and buildings boarded up, but we also discovered what was called a food desert. 2 grocery stores, 17 liquor stores, and a half-mile radius. And at that point, we said, now we can do something. So this book talks about that story, but also stories of other people who've done amazing things and just using the gifts that God gave them and following their fire.
No, that's one of the things I love about this book is the stories you tell. And really, I would say what inspired you to write this book is so consistent with the work that we do and where we're located. And I think there was probably a couple things that drew us to each other. I'll never forget, you heard I was a basketball player and you came and sat next to me and said, let's play one-on-one.
I didn't realize how good you were. I didn't realize you were the truth like that.
You said I saw him walking, and I could tell he could play a little bit. Let's play one-on-one. And you literally pulled up a chair right next to me. And sports was kind of initially what connected us. But then hearing your story, and like you said, man, back then, hearing your heart for change and hearing your heart to want to make a difference. And I remember at one point in time, I think we were on a phone call together. And I think you shared the title of this book with me, and I wrote it down on a sticky note. You had a couple of different things in your heart, and I'll never forget sitting there listening, and you wrote this down, and then to see it come to fruition several years later, and to hear all the stories behind it. You talk about just kind of what you saw on that listening tour. Again, Chicago, you know, whether you're in Omaha, Nebraska, there is a gap in cities around the country. And for many of us, we recognize, and 2020 was huge, but realizing, man, redlining played a huge role in that. We say that red lines led to red dots. And those red dots represent lives that have been lost. Those red dots represent poverty, crime. It represents this gap in our city that's represented all over. Talk about, and you share this in your book, and that's why I'm excited for people to listen to it, but talk about some of the stories you heard, and even as a Black man, some of the things you saw and started to recognize when it came to just this gap that was in your city.
Yeah, well, before I answer the question, I know it's like, Sam, like we got to get to the point, but like Josh, your witness inspired me. And I say that not just for you, but for anybody listening to this, like your witness, what you were doing in Omaha and with the buy, I was like, man, like this dude's doing it and he's living it. There's other stuff going on, right? Like speaking in churches and all these, but it's like there was something deeper. And I was like, man, I want to get to know more. So I don't want to like go overly like, oh, Sam's great, Josh is great. Like I want people to understand it's like, dude, no matter where you are, what you're serving, who you're serving, where like you're serving, like God's got some stuff underneath the surface that he wants to use in you and through you. And he wants you to be a conduit for his like currency. And his currency is serving, it's giving, it's loving. His currency isn't always a paycheck or money. His currency has more to do with like, who are you with and how do you spend your time, how do you spend your talents and your treasures. And so for me, I think some of those stories really revolved around a young girl named Azaria. And this young girl I actually met when she was probably 13 years old. I was probably going on my 5th or 6th year in the NFL. And mind you, like I had all this stuff. I played in the NFL and all this stuff. And I wanted to give back and serve and whatever I wanted to, right? So there's things you can go and like read to people, or you can go and like serve, whatever. And so there was a young girl I got a chance to meet with some teammates of mine who said, hey, let's just try and spend time in the city we call home. Like, forget about like the logos and the cameras. Let's just go hang. And so we started to hang. We sat in these, we called them at the time like listening circles,
Yeah.
where we just shared with like what's going on. And the first story I heard from Azaria, and I believe I have permission to share this because we've had a conversation, but she's this beautiful Black girl with like, beautiful Black braids and kind of dark skin like me, like, beautiful. And she said she's highly intelligent. And one of the things that she shared, she says, went to school on the west side of Chicago. And she said, man, people at school, it kind of hurts my feelings what they say. We're like, what do you mean? She's like, well, they see how good I am at school and they call me white. And I'm like that one hurt.
Yeah.
Because how come, like, intelligence has nothing to do with the color of your skin.
Yeah.
And so the fact that she was labeled as white because she is smart broke my heart. Because I believe I'm highly intelligent, right? Like there have been stuff, top 20 smartest athletes, whatever. It's like, and I've heard comments like that before.
Yep.
And so to me, this 20-something-year-old football player making whatever, and this 13-year-old kid on the west side of Chicago, like, well, we have a lot more in common than I ever would have thought. And that conversation was probably 2015, 2016, 17. Well, fast forward, her and even all this group stayed together. And when COVID happened, when George Floyd is killed, we're having more conversations about what we could do to make change, right? Some of those conversations around that, we did more listening circles, as your healing circles, everyone call them. There are some police officers who were like, man, like our job is to serve and protect, or protect and serve, and we forget about the serve part.
Yep.
Right? Some athletes saying, man, I thought I'd be immune to the racism. Yep. Or to like people looking at me some kind of way. Now that I make all this money, but I still feel the same things. I get profiled, I get pulled over. Right? These are like multimillionaires. Got some kids from, like I said, South Side Chicago. They're like, man, how come when I turn on the TV, only people who look like me are the ones getting shot? And so there were these real conversations once we decided to lean in and to get close of like, oh, wow, there's stuff happening. I wonder what if there was a way I could be a part of it? Not just me, I meaning us, right? So whether it's through Abide in Omaha or in Chicago or whatever, what if I could be a part of it? And that first step, Josh, was just getting close. Like a lot of people don't even want to get close. When things start to go awry, things start to get dirty, ugly, and scary, people run away, but you run to the fire, right? I want to be a person that wants to run to the fire, run to the situation. So, because my dad said this the other day at church. He pastors a church. He's a mental health, doctor of mental health and a pastor and a businessman. But he was preaching. He said, man, God hits a moving target. Like you want to see God show up. Yes, consistently serve, but follow him, chase him. Don't sit down. Like if you have money, use it. You have time, use it. You have talent, use it for his kingdom. Not just like, oh, look at my kingdom. No, man, God's.
Yep. It's powerful. I love that you brought up your dad because you talk about him a lot in the book. You talk about him at the beginning and his impact on your life, taking you back to the country you're from and helping rebuild a village there, his vision. It's crazy because my dad is similar. And even the seat I'm sitting on today and the work we're doing was started by my parents. And so having the ability to watch somebody, to watch individuals, you talk about this idea of dreaming and putting together a plan and just the idea of chasing the fire and just how that affected your life, how it affected my life, how it's affected hundreds and thousands of people's lives who are now going after the fire to heal the broken world. How would you encourage somebody to find their fire? You talk about this in the book, but there's a fire that we're all called to go after. We all have a role to play. We all have gifts and passions and strength. How would you encourage somebody to go after their fire?
I would say to touch doorknobs. Touch doorknobs. What I mean by that is I haven't been in too many fires. I don't know. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a firefighter, right? But like, I don't know if this is an advisor or not, but like when you there's a fire somewhere, you touch a doorknob, that doorknob will be hot.
Yep.
Like you'll set something. You may not hold on to it too long, but there's something there in our soul, in our spirit. Like there are these things that God implanted in us that he put us on this earth to do. And if we don't test them out, try them out, get close, touch the doorknob, we won't even know half of what God has in store for us. I heard I don't know who it was, but a pastor or somebody teaching say, man, I don't want to get to heaven. I guess I follow Jesus, but I don't want to get to heaven and meet the Lord and be like, man, I had so much more in store for you if you would have just asked. If you would have just taken that leap of faith, if you would have just spent a little bit more time with me and trusted me. Like all those things, right, that you desire, that you hope for, that you wish, like those things that when you were a little kid that you wanted to do, like maybe God put those in your heart for a reason. Those things that you started to get towards adolescence, like those things that broke your heart. Like I would ask you, what are the things that break your heart? Maybe it's police abuse of power, or children who are being abused, sexual exploitation, like touch the doorknob, get close, peek in, right? Maybe it has to do with education and some disparities there. Touch the doorknob, lean in, get close, be curious, right? Maybe it has to do with in athletics and in sports and see, like touch the doorknob and see what's hot and then follow that thing. That's a signal, that's a sign, right? Man, why? Maybe it's on social media. And you're seeing something, or you're looking at something, or you feel what people are going through. It's like you don't always have to shy away. Sometimes you can lean in. Sometimes you can get close and be curious. So I would say touch doorknobs to find out what's hot. And then once you find that out, continue to do some research.
Come on. There's something powerful about proximity and getting close and allowing that to break our hearts. I love what you said here, though, in the beginning, because a lot of times we think of touching the doorknob, we think about making a difference. We think about the sacrifice, maybe the fear that might hold us back, which you talk about. But this is what you said. You said, I want you to know about the joy of heaven on earth, the joy of seeking justice and journeying towards a better tomorrow. But the workers are few and change starts with you. Talk about the joy that we get to experience when we're a part of some game-changing, world-changing activity.
So when Azaria was 13, her and I connected. Fast forward 14, 15, 16, stayed connected. 17 or so, stayed connected. And that was right around the time where we did this listening tour. And she was one of the 30 or so kids in that tour. And then after that listening tour, we took an actual tour, a physical tour. These athletes you heard about, right? Jason Hayward, World Series champion, Jason Kipnis, Malcolm Subban, Ryan Arcidiacono, Max Drews, right? Remember, was in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Heat. Like all these, but took a tour, and Azaria was on that bus tour, right? And when we were on this tour, I asked Jason Hayward, I said, hey, Jason, we've been on this bus on the west side of Chicago for, 15 minutes. I said, how many grocery stores have you seen? He said, maybe one. I said, how many grocery stores how many liquor stores, have you counted? He said, over 10.
Wow.
So we said, okay, that's a problem, right? Touch the doorknob. It feels a little bit hot. What if we got curious, look behind it, and try to do something about it? And so we started thinking and, pondering. And as we're still finishing this tour, we're kind of on our way back in Azaria, that now back to that 16, 17-year-old girl, however she was, maybe 15 at the time, on this bus. We're getting ready to get off, and someone said, hey, Azaria, is there anything you want to say? And Azaria, 15-year-old kid on the bus, said, hey, to these pro athletes making hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions, however many millions. Hey, I know some of y'all view this as a field trip and to come and take a look at my community.
Right.
But some of us, we choose to live here. We choose to call this place home.
Yep.
So I hope that you'll remember that when you go back to your homes. And we did. And so to your point of the joy of the journey, like we consistently met like week after week after week with these young, we call them young entrepreneurs, right? But these young kids and these athletes and this nonprofit who said, hey, what if we could actually purchase one of the liquor stores and turn it into a food mart? Well, the problem was, Josh, that a lot of people, they've been trying to buy that liquor store for decades.
Yep.
Apparently, they've been trying to get rid of that liquor store for 20 years. Then the dude wouldn't sell it, making too much money. Well, all of a sudden, COVID happened. And all of a sudden, like looting and rioting, his place had gotten broken into.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, he was more amenable to a sale. So we raised money, like 10, 15 athletes raised over $500,000, partnered with the nonprofit, right? Use your time, use your talent, use your treasures.
Yep.
Right? And all of a sudden, we paid this guy over asking price for this liquor store.
Come on.
And then while we're doing that, we actually asked the young, the kids, I'll say for now, is, hey, would you want a food mart in your community? They said, yeah, we would love one. We said, okay, well, before we go there, where do you get your food from? They said, well, Sam, if we want to get any food, we go to McDonald's. or the gas station? I was like, all right, McDonald's, I get, but the gas station, come on now. They're like, we're to get something like healthy, like, or healthy. They said, Sam, if we want to get something healthy or organic, we have to commute 45 minutes to the next city. So yes, Sam, we would love a food mart in our community. And then we said, okay, well, what do you want to name it, right? So like while we're raising the money, they're raising the ideas. They're raising the ground. They're raising their purpose. It's thinking, at least for the time of like, we can build something and do something. Summer jobs were canceled because of COVID. Well, hey, now you got a summer job, right? So all of a sudden, like, I'll just fast forward. Like you can read more about it in the book, right? But like the point is, I'm married. I got 4 kids. Like best day of my life was like the day I got married. We had a Nigerian wedding, right? So we did like 2 weddings, right? But like best day. Second best day was like when my first child was born. It was this thing of like, oh my gosh, I'm a father. Third best day, and you could say like outside to give my life to the Lord, right? But like third best day was the day that we opened up this food mart. That used to be a liquor store on the west side of Chicago, Austin Harvest. When it was open, I'm in my office right now. This is like the studio when I do ESPN. Like when I do my shows for ESPN, I'm a college football NFL analyst. Like this is the studio I use. You can't see it on the camera, but right there is a picture of the grand opening of right off camera of Austin Harvest. So like I always have that in my periphery because that was one of the highlights of my life. And so the joy of the journey, the joy of seeking justice, the joy of heaven on earth, like it felt like heaven was coming on earth in that moment, at that time, in that place. This place that was once broken has now become a place to behold. And so there's nothing like it. When you follow your fire and follow the passion that God-given gifts, abilities, and talents He's given you, like there's nothing better, right? It literally feels like heaven on earth.
Come on, man. And that's why and that's why we're getting this book into everybody's hands, because I mean, you go to great lengths to talk about that and to give us a picture of what it looks like. And again, as I'm reading this book and knowing you and your story and your heart, and then knowing our context, I mean, our campus is located in a neighborhood that was considered one of the 3rd worst places in our city. And I remember when we purchased our campus, I had other leaders from around the community tell me, man, Josh, we don't work in that community because it's too dangerous. It's too violent. I know this. We've got a liquor store on the corner right next to our campus, and we've been praying and believing that one day we can buy that and potentially do something with food and health. And so, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but when you're talking about your story and knowing where we are and what we've experienced and exactly what you said, man, there's more drug stores, liquor stores on corners than there are healthy grocery stores. And
Josh, God shows up on the other side of risk. And you know this better than anyone. For those who are like, man, I don't really know. Like God, a friend of mine, a mentor of mine reminded me this. God shows up on the other side of risk. You are the answer to someone else's prayers. I didn't realize it. People have been praying for that community for 20 years. 20 years. And all of a sudden, like little old me and some other athletes, yeah, what do we know about food? I like eating food. I like athletes. And then a community, and then some that's what we call them, young entrepreneurs. They were like, they designed the whole place.
Come on.
Right? They designed what it wanted to look like, what foods. They're procuring the food right now. Like they're like the ones who are deciding what foods and what then like people have been praying. The same thing you said police officers. They were there that day. I'm looking off camera that day of like the food mart. They were there that day, and they said, I might even just get this thing so y'all can see it, but they said, man, ever since this liquor store was removed, there's been a lot less activity in this neighborhood. Gang activity, right? Some people even said, man, they would actually not go down those streets, to your point, because of the activity. And and then what I was going to say too is Zaria, right? Like we were asking her, like, hey, what she said some of y'all, y'all see this as a field trip. We live here. We call this place home. And one of the nonprofits similar to you all, like they kind of make a home base in that community. She said, man, she's like, ever since that nonprofit joined the community, she said, my community felt a lot homier. Right. My neighborhood felt homier. And then so imagine like that homey thing. But now all of a sudden for us, it was like, man, what if we do this like this kitchen? You know what I mean? So my point is this, like, no matter who you are, where you're serving, like find the people who are already on the ground doing the work and add fuel to
Yep.
their fire, right? And then all of a sudden that might ignite your own fire. I'm gonna get up and you're gonna see like my student. I'm just gonna whatever. Like it's gonna be like 40 seconds. You're gonna see my stuff in the background. But I want to show y'all this picture of like talk about heaven on earth and all these things, right? Like I'm an Arizona Cardinals, deal in the back. But hopefully y'all can see it. But like it's a little bit hard to see. But long story short, I'll send you a picture or something.
Beautiful.
But like this is the day where we had that grand opening. And you can't see it, but it's me along with a lot of the people, Nivea, Zaria, Bryce, Josh, Donovan, Kamari, who got a chance on that day to like be a part of this thing. And so my point is this, like God hits a moving target.
Come on.
God shows up on the other side of fear and he wants you like, I know the plans I have for you. Prosper, not to harm, a future and a hope, right? I've already got this stuff in store for you. I prepared for these good works for you to do beforehand, right? So like, just do them, right? Get up and go. Like that would be my exhortation or my encouragement to us as we're listening. It's like, man, like I want to be a part of that thread. One needle ain't gonna thread the whole thing.
Yep.
One piece of thread, I want to be one piece of thread can't do. I want to maybe it can. I'm not a knitter, but my point is, you need a lot of people to make this thing happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I love about you. Number one, you're a doer. You're an activist. This book you even talk about, it's not just a how-to, it's a to-do. This is what we're called to do, how we're called to live. And to your point, especially guys coming from teams, man, you need everybody on the team. Everyone plays a different role. Some people are called to be out front. Some people are called to support. Some people are called to give. Some people are called to serve. Like it takes everyone. And so, with our final minutes, I got a couple of questions. The first one is this: talk about the power of team when it when it comes to the change that we bring in the world. Because all the stories you're telling, you played a role, but there were so many people that God brought around you, brought around the situation that really helped it become a reality. Just talk about the power of having the right people around you.
Well, that's why I was drawn to you, Josh. I mean, we were at this conference, all these leaders and business people and like all these super whatever. And I heard, man, this dude used to play basketball. I was like, let's have a conversation, right? Because like, team.
That's right.
You get team. You understand, like on a football field, I'm 1 of 11 out on the defense. And if one of us is out of our gap, it could be a touchdown. If one of us messes up our assignment, it could be a touchdown. But if one of us encourages the other one, all of a sudden, instead of just like a 2-3 yard gain, now it's a negative play. I'll be on the football field looking at my other guy on the other side. I play outside linebacker, look at my other outside linebacker, be like, hey, man, like run, pass. Or, hey, man, like here's the route they're going to run, right? My knowledge helps him make a play. Or better yet, him making this great pass rush helps me get an interception, right? All of a sudden, we win the game because we work as a team. Georgia's defense, well, let me go to Georgia. Let's be specific. The best teams I've been a part of are the ones that operate as a team, like this conglomerate. They're together. They're a unit. You can have a hand, 5 fingers, you can have a fist, however you want to say it, right? Like it's a team. And so you, Josh, whether you knew it or not, inspired me that day for this work that God had prepared. And even as I was thinking and praying, you were this inspiration, right? Like maybe I may be inspiring people what they're doing in Chicago, right? Maybe you listening right now or watching this right now, you might be saying like, man, well, who am I inspiring, right? You're talking about like parents, people raising their kids. Like your kids are, I watch my parents every single summer go to Nigeria and do this medical mission trips. They would leave for like 2 weeks. They were making good money at the time, right? Doctors, nurses, whatever. And they would leave, right? They would go with surgeons and dentists. And I'm like, man, what do y'all do? I watch them. Right? I got a chance when I was 15 to start going with them on these trips. I would see them serve. So all of a sudden to me as a son now I'm gonna get a chance to do the same things they were doing, right? You watched your dad. Right? You set the seat that you're sitting in. So my point is like whether you are a parent or a child or like a spiritual father or a son, somebody like people are watching you. How great would it be to be a part of like God's gonna do it anyway. Do you want to be a part of the story or not? Like that and you like he wants you to be a part of his story, history. So that's what I would say.
Come on, man. Come on. Well, I'll say this. You've got all of that and more in this book. And as I was reading it, I was re-inspired to do what we're already doing, to find ways to do more, to find ways to get more people involved. I mean, I couldn't help but get excited for people to read this book because of how much it connects with who we are as an organization, but just our heart, to see people leverage the gifts, the passions, the story God's given them to impact the world around them, and to put a face with this book, somebody that we can see on Saturdays and all throughout the week on ESPN, a smile that lights up a room. Bro, man, thank you for taking the time to write this. Thank you for following your fire. Thank you for just always being willing to whether it's talk on the phone, text, or to jump on a podcast and interview like this and share with our audience. So before we go, man, anything else you'd want to share as people are watching and thinking and dreaming, just an encouragement either to check out the book and or to lean into what God is calling them into?
I think we're called to a higher purpose, Josh. And I think sometimes we think that our jobs are why we're here, and that might be part of it. But I think oftentimes God is using our jobs, our work, our fact that we're a parent or not a parent, right? That our singleness, our being married, like to do His will, to do His work, to write His story. So like my encouragement would be, yes, get the book. If you haven't got already, you may already have it. But like get the book, right? Like read more about the stories that God is writing in our lives. But more than that, my real encouragement would be like, take a breath, take a beat, and take inventory of where God has taken you and allow that to be your compass. Allow that to be your compass to where He wants you to go. Touch doorknobs. And don't be afraid if it's hot. Get close, get curious, and then let God hit you as you move. Like the whole point of this book really was this thing of like, hey, everyone was listening, and listening is great. But there's a time we need to go from listening to actioning. And Josh, you in action inspired me. Hopefully me in action will inspire others. And hopefully you, as everyone's listening, as we're watching, like us in action is inspiring another generation underneath us and maybe even above us as well. So let's go, let's move, let's do the work God has called us to do. But sometimes it starts taking a break.
It's good.
And like making a list. Right? A buddy of mine texted me, he's like, hey man, tell 20 people that Jesus loves them today. Right? Like write down 50 things you're grateful for. Like give that a shot and see what happens.
It's good.
I'm telling you, man, the world will change.
Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Take a break. Take some time to think, pray, ask, and invite God to speak to you. I was thinking back to around those same moments when, individuals like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, we came up with a phrase because everybody wanted to protest. And we said, you know what? Let's not just protest, let's invest. And the investment is what you talk about here in this book. It's what you've done with your life. The investment is what we're calling people to do. Let's take action. Let's really take a step forward and see change happen. Let's not just talk about it. Let's be about it so that the world can change. My brother, Sam Acho, thank you. Thank you so much, dude, for taking the time. Seriously. Wish we always had more time, but super grateful for you, all that you're doing, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, Josh, thank you for being an inspiration for me, for your family, for your extended family, and so many others. Thank you for pouring into your community in Nebraska. I know they need it, and I know I need it too.
Come on, man. Love you, brother.
Love you too.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.